Okay, so this is RHYS voice test 1, sort of flirty, tail end of chapter 4 into 5. So there's also going to be a little bit of TAMLIN in this. They need to be really quite distinctive voices, so I'll give it a go. Thunder cracked behind me as if two boulders had been hurled against each other. People screamed, falling back, a few vanishing outright as darkness erupted. I whirled, and through the night drifting away like smoke on wind, I found RYSAND straightening the lapels of his black jacket. "Oh, hello, Feyre darling," he purred. I shouldn't have been surprised, not when RYSAND liked to make a spectacle of everything, and found pissing off TAMLIN to be an art form. But there he was. RYSAND, High Lord of the Night Court, now stood beside me, darkness leaking from him like ink in water. He angled his head, his blue-black hair shifting with the movement. Those violet eyes sparkled in the golden phalite as they fixed on TAMLIN, as he held up a hand to where TAMLIN and Lucien and their sentries had their swords half drawn, sizing up how to get me out of the way, how to bring him down. But at the lift of that hand, they froze. Ianthe, however, was backing away slowly, face drained of colour. "What a pretty little wedding," RYSAND said, stuffing his hands into his pockets as those many swords remained in their sheaths. The remaining crowd was pressing back, some climbing over seats to get away. Rhys looked over me slowly and clicked his tongue on my silk gloves. Whatever had been building beneath my skin went still and cold. "Get the hell out," growled TAMLIN, stalking towards us, claws ripped from his knuckles. Rhys clicked his tongue again. "Oh, I don't think so. Not when I need to call in my bargain with Feyre, darling." My stomach hollowed out. No, not now. "You try to break the bargain and you know what'll happen," Rhys went on, chuckling a bit as the crowd fell over themselves to get away from him. He jerked his chin towards me. "I gave you 3 months of freedom. You could at least look happy to see me." I was shaking too badly to say anything. Rhys's eyes flickered with distaste. The expression was gone when he faced TAMLIN again. "Oh, I'll be taking her now." "Don't you dare," TAMLIN snarled. Behind him the dais was empty. Ianthe had vanished entirely, along with most in attendance. "Was I interrupting? Oh, I thought it was over." Rhys gave me a smile dripping with venom. He knew, through that bond, through whatever magic was between us, he'd known I was about to say no. "Well, at least Feyre seemed to think so." TAMLIN snarled. "Well, let us finish the ceremony." "Your High Priestess seems to think it's over too." TAMLIN stiffened as he looked over his shoulder to find the altar empty. When he faced us again, the claws had eased halfway back into his hands. "RYSAND." "I'm in no mood to bargain," Rhys said. "Even though I could work it to my advantage, I'm sure." I jolted at the caress of his hand on my elbow. "Let's go." I didn't move. "TAMLIN," I breathed. TAMLIN took a single step towards me, his golden face turning sallow, but remained focused on Rhys. "Name your price." "Oh, don't bother," Rhys crooned, linking elbows with me. Every spot of contact was abhorrent, unbearable. He'd take me back to the Night Court, the place Amarantha had supposedly modelled under the mountain after, full of depravity and torture and death. "TAMLIN, please." "Oh, such dramatics," RYSAND said, tugging me closer. But TAMLIN didn't move, and those claws were wholly replaced by smooth skin. He fixed his gazes on Rhys, his lips pulling back in a snarl. "If you hurt her—" I know, RYSAND drawled. "I'll return her in a week." No, TAMLIN couldn't be making those kinds of threats, not when they meant he was letting me go. Even Lucien was gaping at TAMLIN, his face white with fury and shock. Rhys released my elbow, only to slip a hand around my waist, pressing me into his side as he whispered into my ear, "Hold on." Then darkness roared, a wind tearing me this way and that, the ground falling away beneath me, the world gone around me. Only Rhys remained, and I hated him as I clung to him. I hated him with my entire heart. Then the darkness vanished. I smelled jasmine first. then saw stars. A sea of stars flickering beyond glowing pillars of moonstone that framed the sweeping view of the endless, snow-capped mountains. "Welcome to the Night Court," was all RHYS said. So now I'm going to jump forward a bit into the start of RHYS's monologue when Feyre is warming up some soup for him, prior to her fully accepting the blonde, which is amazing. So let's give it a go. "I was captured during the war by Amarantha's army. Cassian and Azriel were in different legions, so they had no idea that my forces and I had been taken prisoner, and that Amarantha's captains held us for weeks, torturing and slaughtering my warriors. They put ash bolts through my wings, and they had those same chains from the other night to keep me down. Those chains are one of Hyburn's greatest assets. Stone delved deep from in their land, capable of nullifying a high phase powers, even mine. So they chained me up between two trees, beating me whenever they felt like it, trying to get me to tell them where the Night Court forces were, using my warriors and their deaths and pain to break me. Only I didn't break, and they were too dumb to know that I was an Illyrian, and all they had to do to get me to yield would be to try and cut off my wings. Maybe it was luck, but they never did, and Amarantha, she just didn't care that I was there. I was yet another High Lord's son, and Jurian had just slaughtered her sister. All she cared about was getting to him and killing him. She had no idea that with every second, every breath I plotted her death. I was willing to make it my last stand, to kill her at any cost, even if it meant shredding my wings to break free. And I watched the guards and learned her schedule, so I knew where she'd be. I set a day and a time, and I was ready. I was so damn ready to make an end of it, and wait for Cassian and Azriel and more on the other side, and there was nothing but my rage, but my relief. My friends weren't there. But the day before I was to kill Amarantha, make my final stand and meet my end, she and Jurian faced each other on the battlefield. I was chained in the mud, forced to watch as they battled, to watch as Jurian took my killing blow. Only she slaughtered him. I watched her rip out his eye, then rip off his finger, and when I was prone, I watched her drag him back to the camp. Then I listened to her slowly, over days and days, tear him apart. His screaming was endless. She was so focused on torturing him that she didn't detect my father's arrival. In the panic, she killed Jurian rather than see him liberated and fled. So my father rescued me and told his men, told Azriel, to leave the ash spikes in my wings as punishment for getting caught. I was so injured that the healers informed me that if I tried to fight before my wings healed, I'd never fly again. So I was forced to return home to recover while the final battles were waged. They made the treaty. The war was built. We'd long ago freed our slaves in the Night Court. We didn't trust the humans to keep our secrets, not when they bred so quickly and frequently that my forefathers couldn't hold all of their minds at once. But our world was changed nonetheless. We were all changed by the war. And now I'm jumping forward just a little bit, towards the end of 54. But your final trial came, and when she started torturing you, something snapped in a way I couldn't explain. Only that seeing you bleeding and screaming undid me. It broke me at last, and I knew as I picked up that knife to kill her, I knew right then what you were. I knew that you were my mate, and you were in love with another male and had destroyed yourself to save him, and that I didn't care. If you were going to die, I was going to die with you. I couldn't stop thinking over and over as you screamed as I tried to kill her. You were my mate, my mate, my mate. And then she snapped your neck, and I felt you die. And this beautiful, wonderful thing that had come into my life, this gift from the cauldron, it was gone. In my desperation, I clung to that bond, not the bargain. The bargain was nothing. The bargain was like a cobweb, but I grabbed that bond between us and I tugged. I willed you to hold on, to stay with me, because if we could get free, then all 7 of us were there. We could bring you back. I didn't care if I had to slice into all their minds to do it. I'd make them save you. You'd freed us with your last breath and my power. I wrapped my power around that bond, the mating bond. I could feel you there, holding on. Home. Home had been at the end of the bond, I told the bone carver. Not Tamlin, not Springcourt, but RYSAND. So, Amarantha died and I spoke to the High Lords mind to mind, convincing them to come forward to offer that spark of power. None of them disagreed. I think they were too stunned to think of saying no. And I again had to watch as Tamlin held you. Kissed you. I wanted to go home to Valaris, but I had to stay to make sure things were set in motion, that you were all right. So I waited as long as I could, and I sent a tug through the bond. Then you came to find me. Okay, something a little bit more fun. Everybody's favourite chapter, chapter 55. Rhys pulled back to survey me, my body naked from the waist up. Paint soaked into my hair, my arms, but all I could think of was his mouth as it lowered to my breast and sucked, his tongue flicking against my nipple. I plunged my fingers into his hair as he braced a hand beside my head, smack atop a palette of paint. He let out a low laugh and I watched breathless as he took that hand and traced a circle around my breast, then lower, until he painted a downward arrow beneath my belly button. Lest you forget where this is going to end. And something else fun. I want you splayed on the table like my own personal feast. Okay, so now I'm going to have a go at the ATTOR and RHYS. A rasping voice sounded in my ear.
Stop or I'll snap your neck.
I knew that voice. It prowled through my nightmares. The ATTOR. The ATTOR had vanished in the moments after Amarantha died, suspected to have fled for the King of Highburn. And if it was here, in the mortal lands, I went pliant in its arms, buying a wisp of time to scan for something, anything, to use against it.
Good. Now tell me.
Night exploded around us. The ATTOR screamed as that darkness swallowed us, and I was wrenched from its spindly hard arms, its nails slicing into my leather. I collided face first with the packed icy snow. I rolled, flipping back, whirling to get my feet under me. The light returned as I rose into a crouch, knife-angled, and there was RYSAND, binding the ATTOR to the snow-shrouded oak with nothing but twisting bands of night, like the ones he had crushed Ianthe's hand. RYSAND's own hands were in his pockets, his face cold and beautiful as death. I'd been wondering where you'd slithered off to. The ATTOR panted as it struggled against the bonds. RYSAND merely sent 2 spears of night shooting into its wings. The ATTOR shrieked as those spears met flesh and sank deep into the bark behind it. Answer my questions, and you can crawl back to your master, Rhys said, as if he were inquiring about the weather.
Oh!
The ATTOR spat. Silvery blood leaked from its wings, hissing as it hit the snow. Rhys smiled. Oh, you forget that I rather enjoy these things. He lifted a finger. The ATTOR screamed.
No!
Rhys's finger paused.
I was sent to get her.
Why? Rhys asked, with that casual, terrifying calm.
That was my order. I'm not to question. The king wants her.
My blood went as cold as the woods around us. Why? Rhys said again. The ATTOR began screaming, this time beneath the force of a power I could not see. I flinched.
Don't know. Don't know. Don't know.
I believed it. Where is the king currently?
Highburn.
Army?
Coming soon.
How large?
Endless. We have allies in every territory, all awaiting.
Rhys cocked his head as if contemplating what to ask next. But he straightened, and Azrael slammed into the snow, sending it flying like water from a puddle. He'd flown in so silently, I hadn't even heard the beat of his wings. Cassian must have stayed at the house to defend my sisters. There was no kindness on Azrael's face as the snow settled, the immovable mask of the High Lord Shadow Singer. The ATTOR began trembling, and I almost felt bad for it as Azrael stalked towards him. Almost, but didn't. Not when these woods were so close to the chateau, to my sisters. RHYS came to the side of Azrael and reached the ATTOR. Next time you try to take her, I kill first, ask questions later. And finally, we're going to have a bash at the SURIEL. So, chapter 50. Bit in the woods where RHYS needs fixing because he got himself all knacked up. And the SURIEL's going to help her out again because he's just that good of a boy. Right. And when a crack sounded through the forest, followed by a screech that hollowed out my ears, I knocked an arrow into my bow and set off to see the SURIEL. It was as horrific as I remembered. Tattered robes barely concealing a body made not of skin, but what appeared to be solid, worn bone. Its lipless mouth held 2 large teeth in its fingers, long, spindly, clicked against each other, while it weighed the fine cloak I'd weighted in the middle of the snare, as if the cloth had been blown on by a wind.
"They're a curse breaker,"
it said, turning towards me, in a voice that was both one and many. I lowered my bow. I have need of you. Time, I was running out of time. I could feel it, that urgency begging me to hurry through the bond.
"What fascinating changes a year has wrought on you, on the world."
A year? Yes, it had been a year now since I'd first crossed the wall. I have questions, I said. It smiled, each one of those stained, 2 large brown teeth visible.
"You have 2 questions.
An answer and an order. I did not waste time, not with RHYS, not when this wood might be full of enemies hunting for us. What poison was used on those arrows?
"Bloodbane,"
it said. I didn't know that poison. I'd never heard of it. Where do I find the cure? The SURIEL clicked its bone fingers against one another, as if the answer lay inside the sound.
"In the forest."
I hissed, my brows flattening. Please, please don't be cryptic. What is the cure? The SURIEL cocked its head, the bone gleaming in the light.
"Your blood. Give him your blood, Cursebreaker. It's rich with the healing gift of the High Lord of Dawn. It shall spare him from the Bloodbane's wrath."
That's it? How much blood?
"A few mouthfuls will do."
A hollow, dry wind, not at all like the misty, cold veils that usually drifted by, brushed my face.
"I helped you before, I've helped you now, and you will free me before I lose my patience, Cursebreaker."
Some primal, lingering human part of me trembled as I took the snare around its legs, pinning it to the ground. Perhaps this time the SURIEL had let itself be caught, and knew how to free itself. Had learned it the moment I'd spared it from the Naga, a test of honor and a favor for the arrow I'd shot to save it last year. But I knocked an ash arrow into my bow, cringing at the sheen of the poison coating it. "Thank you for your help," I said, bracing myself for a fight should it charge at me. The SURIEL's stained teeth clacked against each other.
"If you wish to speed your mate's healing, in addition to your blood, a pink-flowered weed sprouts by the river. Make him chew it."
I fired my arrow at the snare before I finished hearing its words. The trap sprang free and the words clicked through me. Mate. What did you say? The SURIEL rose to its full height, towering over me, even from across the clearing. I'd not realized that despite the bone it was muscled. Powerful.
"If you wish to..."
The SURIEL paused and grinned, showing nearly all of those brown, thick teeth.
"You did not know, then?"
"Say it," I gritted out.
"The High Lord of the Night Court is your mate."
I wasn't entirely sure I was breathing.
"Interesting,"
the SURIEL said. Mate. 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 RYSAND was my mate. Not lover, not husband, but more than that. A bond so deep, so permanent, it was honoured above all others, rare and cherished. Not TAMLIN's mate, RYSAND's. I was jealous and pissed off. "You're mine." The words slipped out of me, low and twisted. Does he know? The SURIEL clenched the robes of its new cloak in its bone fingers.
"Yes."
For a long while?
"Yes, since
No, he can tell me. I want to hear it from his lips. The Suriel cocked its head.
You are feeling too much, too fast. I cannot read it.
How can I possibly be his mate? Mates were equal, matched, at least in some ways.
He is the most powerful High Lord to walk this earth. You are new. You are made of all 7 High Lords, unlike anything. Are you two not similar in that? Are you not matched?
Mate, and he knew. He'd known. I glanced towards the river, as if I could see all the way to the cave to where RYSAND slept. When I looked back at the Suriel, it was gone. Alright, see what you think to them. Let us know. I'm gonna go get some tea now.